My presentation is the state of SEO and beyond, and I use a lot of movie references, but my sweet spot for movies is like 85 to 95, so this is from back to school, of course. Just a little bit about me. I have a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. I've got a couple of golden retrievers. I love Full House. I'm really into wrestling, so if you follow me on Twitter, the other night I was at WWE Raw down at the AAC, and I got my sign on TV a bunch, which was really fun. And then I love Transformers because I like good versus evil. And I love Back to the Future 2 because I just like the future. And what's cool about Back to the Future 2 is like, that's this year. It's so great. So, I got into gardening a few years ago because my wife was like, I want a garden, build me a garden. So I built these I followed the book. It said build, square foot gardens. So I built these things and it was so awesome. And I was like, cursing while I was building them, but then every day I would come home from work and I would see, how are y'all doing? Are y'all growing? Or I was a freak talking to my plants. But I fell in love with it so much that 6 months later I had this built because now I have this massive garden. These are my tomatoes this year, and that's my little girl, Clara. Some people say I go a little overboard sometimes with things when I really get into them, so those tomatoes are kind of proof of that. One of the greatest things about gardening is that the universal answer to every gardening question ever is, it depends. Which is a lot like SEO, because one guy's SEO advice might work for site A, but it doesn't really work for site B. So gardening is the same thing. You could be growing tomatoes at your house and the guy next door to you is not having any luck because maybe the sun doesn't shine just right over the back of his fence. So I like that stuff. Oh, this is my license plate for a couple of years. I like to get kind of creative and have a little fun, but when they were, they wanted a renewal after the second year, I was like, I'm about to have another kid, so that money went to that. Sorry, Texas. This is my resume, some of the sites I've worked with, mainly again on retail and travel, Nike, Radio Shack, J.Crew, Volcom, Cole Haan, Hurley, stuff, really awesome retail sites. So here's some, just points about me. I started learning SEO in 2005, and I think I'm still learning. It's always changing. It's one of the things that I really love about it. I totally figured out this thing called MSN Search and Win in 2006, and some of the guys that I told about it were ended up being quoted in the New York Times, and it was really a cool contest that they launched this website, MSN did, and every time you search for a keyword, you might win something. And so being an SEO, I just went, Control U. And I looked at the source code, and I saw that all the winning keywords were in the keywords tag. And so one of my buddies wrote a script and was just searching, and he won so much stuff because he was just hitting MSN with 5,000 queries a second. Anyway, gift cards to anywhere and TVs and stuff. It was really fun. I won an award at SES 2008, which was pretty awesome. Then Danny Sullivan followed me on Twitter. That's one of my favorite bragging points. I spoke on a panel at SMX West 2010 with the product manager of Google Buzz. She wasn't really happy with me because I was creating Google Buzz accounts for all my clients. And she's like, that's not really what it's meant for. And I was like, so? Well, anyway, I was totally hipster. I was into Google Buzz before anybody. Okay. At SMX 2012 East, I presented a ton of evidence of Black Hat, kind of illegal stuff that a lot of payday loan people were doing with their websites. And 8 months later, there was the payday loan update. Coincidence? I think not. And then at SMX Advanced last year, it was the first time I was asked to speak there, and it was so cool. I was I actually got a hashtag trending on Twitter. It was a hashtag small data. It was pretty fun. So that's some things about me. And this is my first time that anyone's ever given me the microphone by myself, so I might start talking like Macho Man or something. I don't know. Macho Man, yeah. I love that guy. Rest in peace. But he's going into the Hall of Fame this year for WWE if you wanted to know. So really to know more about me and how I think as an SEO, you have to really look at who I learned from. Todd Friesen, Greg Bozer, Todd Malakote, Dave Naylor, Aaron Wall. These were the guys that had handles. That whole handle thing came from the hackers back in the 80s. These were the guys that were making thousands of dollars a day gaming the system before Matt Cutts showed up. And so I would sit at, I happened to work for Todd at Range over in Fort Worth, and I would go on trips and I would be sitting at tables and bars listening to these guys talk about all the things they were doing back in like 2005 and 6, and it was super cool. And I got this mindset that they were not hackers, but they were just like gaming the system big time because it was still able to be gamed, and I love that. And it really kind of seemed like this. Like SEO was really cool back then. You know, we were all like phone freakers kind of, and then like this was Google, and these guys were, you know, Matt Cutts. Just is that Penn and Teller? No. And then, you know, everybody I knew, we thought we were like zero cool, like we were back there at our system. But in reality, what we were was like Kramer, and we were sitting there on our little laptops just punching away. And the funny thing about this is that back in those days, the SEO guy was or girl was over in the corner doing his thing. No one else knew what the hell he was doing, or her. And this really made me laugh because that's how I thought of myself back then. It was just I'm over here doing something. Yeah, you don't know what it is, but anyway. So my SEO heroes are the reasons like I love new ideas. I have 1,000 Hotmail accounts. Don't ask me what I use them for. I spread my sites across several servers. I have different Google Analytics account. Sometimes I don't use GA because that Google will find you. I'm into domaining, which basically means I collect a lot of domains and don't sell them, which is kind of like a tax for me because I'm an idiot. It was the reason I was sitting at my computer when Facebook launched vanity URLs. I was like at home and I had buddies calling me, hey, can you get my domain or my URL? And I was like, sure, give me your password. So I got a lot of Facebook passwords that way. It was really awesome. I have hundreds of Twitter handles. I have dozens of Facebook pages. And I even have like maybe a few dozen LO accounts. Yes. So if you're on LO, you probably saw one of my pages recently. Really, but none of that works anymore. It just doesn't. It's not like, I mean, SEO is like secretive and fun and it's cool and all that, but really, this is a picture of Google's first server rack. In 2008, they launched their millionth server. Like, these guys, I don't even know what they're doing. I know that they have a patent to have a data center in the ocean. So if you think that because your sites are on different servers and they're on different registrars and all that stuff, Google's finding out who you are pretty quick. And, you know, all that stuff is just kind of, I don't know, today it seems kind of silly, but I don't know, I'm paying for more servers still. Really, in the old days of SEO, we were really worried, like, all we wanted was traffic. It was basically like the client would say, bring us traffic and let us deal with it once it gets there. That was it. But we know better today. It's not just about getting traffic. In fact, I have seen instances where too much traffic leads to bad things. So maybe you get fewer qualified visits, which increases your bounce rate, it decreases your conversion rate, and it decreases revenue per visitor. And so that tends to lead to an unhappy client. So I drew these two graphs because everyone loves graphs. This is an example where visits increased, but revenue went down. Client's not happy. They pay you as SEOs to get more traffic, but if revenue's not up, they're mad. This is the opposite. Revenue is up, but traffic is down. And you're like, hey, look at the revenue's up. And they're like, well, what about traffic? And then they just look mad at you. So this happens a lot. And so I think that, more traffic does not necessarily solve my problems. And I really wanted to make a hashtag tonight. A ridiculous hashtag of the day is MTDNSMP. It looks like that. And then this birds with arms is like, that hashtag is ridiculous. Birds with arms is one of my favorite memes. You got to go check it out. It's super cool. So let's switch gears for a minute. That dog is ridiculous. I love that birds with arms too. He's great. I want to talk about the future of SEO. Everyone loves the future of SEO. How do you feel? You feel pretty good about the future of SEO, Huel? Reasonably. If you're a Breaking Bad fan, that's what that's from. It's one of my favorites. So I built this SEO timeline. This was before Matt Cutts. Like prior to 2000, you basically had Frank Drebin from Police Squad monitoring the web, and everything that could happen was happening. Like the coolest stuff, the most probably like people were getting ripped off and making tons of money. It was so great. And then Matt Cutts shows up, and like in 2003, the Boston update comes out, which, trivia fact here, Boston I think was one of the first like named algorithm updates. And ever since then, he's been really doing lots of stuff to us from Florida and Jagger and NoFollow and Penguin and Panda. Really made life hard for us, and all the big brands got to be rewarded. Love Matt. He's been awesome to me. One time I had a site that got hacked, and so the penalty was put on it because the server got hacked. And so I sent him a note, and he helped me out once I got all the stuff figured out. He helped me get it out of the Google penalty. So love that guy. Awesome. So what comes next? Maybe the machines are here to destroy us all. Who knows? But the future of SEO is kind of weird right now. Like, if you think about it, Google and Bing, both, like, neither of them have their face of SEO anymore. Like, there's not really anyone to complain to. Like, I can't wait for the next big Google update to come out, and no one's going to be able to bitch at Matt. It's going to be like, well, who do we write to? Some software data centers? What's the IP address? I don't know. Well, I do know, but I won't tell. Okay. Some of the things about SEO is like, what's more important, the past, the present, or the future? I wrote an article one time because I felt like as an SEO account manager, sometimes I was an SEO account janitor because I was having to clean up a lot of stuff from whoever had the client before I did. I was having to go do disavows and really just there was just a lot of stuff that was going on. So I think in a lot of ways it's really good to know the history of SEO. At the same time, I think that it's great to think about the future. But everybody really obsesses about it. It's like, what's going on in the future of SEO? And so you look on the web and you see these articles, which are awesome if you love to read about the future and predictions and stuff. Here's some from Forbes, SE Land. This is from VentureBeat. It's people writing about their predictions for SEO. I know Rand does one every January 1st or so. I took the search engine land one. I do this a lot. I don't really ever publish it. But I put all the interview answers into a word cloud. And I wanted to see what words popped out of all, because those are really good SEOs. And I kicked out Google and mobile and content. And I found that brands, social, people, all the things that you would expect to be the future of SEO are, what you would see there. Devices, audience, all that stuff. So pretty cool little fun thing you can do with interviews. But really, why were there so many articles about the future of SEO? Because we love it. We love to read about the future. And ironically, all these sites are simply just giving us what we like. And that's what we should all be doing with our websites, is creating content that we know our customers like. I like this Courage Wolf. Bite off more than you can chew, then chew it. So that's really motivational. What's cool about SEO, and you can really see it in the data, is there are like 200 and something thousand articles that have the future of SEO, those 3 words in a row in the title, on the page. Future of PPC, it's like 20,000. So I'm just saying that like SEO people are more awesome because we're like futurists. So PPC guys, deal with it. I like the future of SEO. It's fun. It sparks my imagination. It makes me wonder. It's clients ask about it. Hey, what's going to happen in 5 years from now? And I'll just spout off some of the stuff I read, even some of my own personal opinions. And then sometimes it makes me laugh when I read an article that says SEO is getting harder in 2015. Well, of course it is. So I get to laugh at it. This is from March 1956. This guy wrote an article, and it starts out and it says father gets up in the morning and goes out into the backyard and gets in his flying saucer and flies 75 miles to the office. And this article says that it's 1965. So we tend to look at, some of the things that we can think of, are they really going to happen within a certain amount of time? I love this quote. It's a mistake to think that moving fast is the same as actually going somewhere. And I think of this moment from Dumb and Dumber where he's like, it feels like you're running at an incredible rate, Harry. He really feels like he's going fast, but really just going with the rest of the people. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because there's something funny about all these predictions about the future. Pretty much, I'd say 100% of my clients, they care about 2015. They really do. They want to hit their goals and projections for this year. And so if I were to spend all of my time working on things that were going to hit in 2016 or 2017, I could be spinning my wheels or even setting them up for failure, and even myself. So there's some things that I really want to focus on that are this year, that are happening right now. I got this quote from DigiDay that basically says that the average lifespan of a client has actually fallen to 3 years. So some of these things, when they ask you, if a client asks you to do something that's going to make their SEO better in 2020, you should be well, maybe we should hit your goals now, or at least spend most of our time working on the things that are happening right now. Again, I love Hulk Hogan. What you gonna do, brother? There's so much stuff to do right now. There's mobile, local, optimization, international, entity search. We'll talk about some of that. And then it really goes back to defining your goals. And it's kind of a time for a quote from Avinash, because whenever you need someone to fill in with some stuff, just get a quote from him because he's really smart. Without a clearly defined list of business objectives, you are doomed, because if you don't know where you are going, then any road will take you there. So make sure that whatever you're doing, it has a goal associated with it. And then whenever I want to know how I'm doing, there's only one guy I ask, Patrick Swayze. You're doing good. So let's switch gears again for a minute. This is a different meme called Bears with Beaks. Pretty cool. Kind of weird. I don't know, it just kind of freaks me out. So I want to talk about what makes an SEO today, because every SEO that I meet, they went to college for a different reason. Some of them didn't go to college. Some of them have their degrees are all in sorts of different stuff. You meet PhDs. You meet people with, that they got general education. So you have to be a marketer, brand enthusiast, a business analyst, data nerd, problem solver, salesperson, economist, technologist, developer, coder, creative, writer, futurist, and then you really got to be a news junkie. I was talking to someone today. I got rid of Facebook off my phone last May because my buddy on my team, Jonathan, told me that it was some ridiculous percentage of everyone who was looking at their phone, like more than half of them were looking at the Facebook app. And I thought to myself, I'd rather look at other things, because I know that there's always articles that are going by that I can't quite keep up with. So I got rid of Facebook so I could try to keep up with SEO more, and I still miss stuff, but it's really funny now on my Twitter and on Google Plus especially. I just try to, whenever I can go there, I always catch stuff. I'm like, whoa, that's incredible, and then I wonder what I missed the previous 2 days. So to be a good SEO, I think you've got to have a lot of these qualities, and it's stuff that I look for when I'm working with someone. And then as SEOs today, we say, what would you say you do here? I wrote down a list of all the things that we do, like in the last year that I've been asked about. There's technical SEO, local SEO, mobile, image, video, content strategy. I had a client that asked me to buy 500 domains for her. I've been asked to blog. I've been asked to do CRO. I've been asked to optimize Drupal and Magento. There's just so many things that we do. And so what I'd like to do is, honey, I shrunk that list. So, got one person. I love Rick Moranis. He's always firing lasers. I mean, think about it. Ghostbusters, in this movie, he's like a badass. Okay. These are the things that I really look at. And you don't expect Rick Moranis to be that kind of guy that's firing lasers all the time, but he was. All right. These are kind of the 3 areas that I focus on right now with most of my clients. There's the basic strategies that we have to get right now. These are things like meta tags. I don't know if you've been reading, but Brian over at Authority Labs, he wrote an article about how Google was changing a lot of the title tags. So no longer are we talking about character widths anymore. We're talking about pixel widths. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But you have to be getting those right. The basic on-page elements, sitemaps, you won't believe, I don't think I have one client that has their sitemaps right when I first sign up with them, because they have international sites, they have mobile sites, they don't have rel alternate, they don't have rel canonicals, they don't have all the language stuff set up, the href lang tags set up if they have international versions. Getting that stuff right, for the clients we've been able to do it with, it's huge, huge growth. Then store locators, geez. Store locators are sad. I was watching President Obama last night on the State of the Union, and there was a couple of times he's like, it's 2015, people, we got to get this right. Talk about store locators. People still don't know how to do store locators, and the internet's basically 20 years old. And I work with brands where it's hard for them to actually get all their addresses right and into a spreadsheet or into an XML feed, or get all their phone numbers right, because sometimes phone numbers change. That stuff's hard to do. Make sure you have that just down pat for your clients. Then your 300 redirects, 301s, 302s, 307s, whatever they might be, those are something that you have to have nailed down today. Some of the newer tactics, these modern, I call them modern meta tags or social meta tags, this open graph, Twitter cards, Pinterest rich pins. Make sure you have those things, because whenever someone takes your link and they share it in Pinterest, or they share it on Twitter, or they share it in Facebook, the language that pops into their little window, you want to make sure that you're the creator of that wording, that copy. You don't want to leave Facebook to pull in some random text. Schema.org markup, that's huge, especially when you're doing a SEO locator. Make sure that every single schema local tag you can do is on there. Then you have secure search, site speed, and page load. It was weird earlier this year. Google doesn't come out and typically say that this is going to be a ranking factor. So when they do, people tend to listen. This was one where they said, we want your site to be secure, but we also want it to load fast. Sometimes those things are actually kind of like concepts that butt heads with each other, because the more secure your site, typically the slower it is. So if you're going to go that route, if you're going to move your site to secure, which you should, especially if your site involves any sort of monetary transaction, you need to have your users feeling comfortable to use your site. If they do that, if they move your site or you move a site to secure search, really keep an eye on your site speed and your page load times, and make sure that they stay under the blink of an eye, as that New York Times article said. Then we have futuristic ideas that we need to really research and learn today. Things such as app indexing, entity search, conversational search. These are coming. For some people, they are already here. And then really anything and everything related to mobile. So I'm going to give you some real world tactics that I use right now. So hopefully, not provided. My favorite quote of all year last year was, "I'm so over not provided," and that's Rhea. She's awesome, and I love that quote. Really, the way that I kind of get around not provided is I can't get the keyword data, so I'm just I'm over it. I go into GA, go to organic channel, go to landing pages, and count the number of landing pages that are driving traffic every single day. Just count it, and then plot it. And then look for anything weird. Look for, if one day all of a sudden your landing pages bottom out, that means people weren't coming to that many pages on your website. For some reason, for this particular trend, it started dropping, and then it hit a low point there, and I'm thinking to myself, if that was me, which it was, I went and looked at it and figured out what was going on. Sometimes clients take pages away. Sometimes they add new ones. All that stuff's going on. Tracking algorithmic updates. This is kind of a fun idea if you have some time and you like Excel, like me. Track everything daily. Then I grabbed my visit data daily for a particular client, and I built this into a spreadsheet so I can put any client into it. Then I went and got a list of all the known algorithmic updates in the last 18 months. And I looked at the traffic to my site one day before the launch of that algorithmic update and the day after. And I did a simple comparison, and I said, were there any on these that kind of were, I don't know statistics, but were there any that jumped out? The first one, Penguin, I would say that was kind of weird. One day the client got 10,000 visits. 2 days later, there was 8,000. There's other things that could go into effect here, like seasonality, or even some sites, they do better on certain days of the week. You can build this, and I looked at it one day before and one day after. I also looked at it 3 days before and 3 days after, summing the visits before the algo update and then summing the 3 days after, and then comparing the two and looking for gains or losses. Does anything jump out at me? One of those, there was an 11% increase after authorship was removed. Yay, stupid Google with their authorship. 7 days before and after, I did 7 days. So same kind of thing, and I took it out to 30 days before and after. So this can kind of help you combat seasonality and really let you know if an update affected your site. Not necessarily that you were penalized, but maybe it affected you positively. So it's a really kind of cool way to look. You can also do the same thing with rankings. Do any of y'all track rankings on a daily basis? Anyone? I do with Authority Labs, Conductor, LinkDex. You can actually, if you have I think I had 1,700 rankings in the top 20 that day, and the day after the update I had 1,779. So small increase, but some of these, most of these didn't show anything. So for me, really, all the numbers on the previous slides didn't really matter. So, ranking reports. Yay, this stuff's really fun. I use SEMrush. They have data issues sometimes, but what's really cool about SEMrush is you can go download, you can enter your client's domain, and you can pull down the monthly rankings for every month going back to January 2012, like in bulk. Now, it depends on what account level you have, but the great thing is if you want to drop like, get the account that'll let you pull like 100,000 at a time, so you can pull 100,000 rows, and do it all in 1 month and then boot them. You know, they're a month-to-month kind of, you know, SaaS model. So just pay for it when you need it if you have to. I've been using these guys now for a few years. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't make money on them or anything like that. But it's really cool because they have tons of keywords. For this particular client, I think it's up around 60,000. Some of our clients are up around 100,000 a month. SEMrush, what they do is they have a gigantic list of 40 million keywords that they track every single month across Google. And so you can just go enter any domain in there, whether it's yours or a competitor's or several competitors, and just start exporting data. They even have an API, so if you want to, you know, like a lot of places do. And SEMrush isn't the only place you can do this. I know Searchmetrics has something that's very similar, and then some people say it's a lot better. I've just been using them so much, I kind of know how they work, so I'm good with it. And then just export it. Once you have the data, what's really cool is you can look at keywords, current position and previous position, and then also the URL. And that's really what I want to talk about here is the URL data. You download all this data, and then the only thing left to do is really just build pivot tables. Now, in wrestling, there's this thing called a tables, ladders, and chairs match. And since I just mentioned wrestling with Devon here, this is really crazy. I think that's the Undertaker up there falling off a ladder. And I know people say wrestling's not real, but that did not feel good. Kind of like when your pivot table crashes your machine. Yep, that's the same thing. Recently, I upgraded my laptop. Like, I went from 3 gigabytes to 16 gigabytes, and it heated up my computer so much that I had to actually buy a little fan to put under my laptop. But overall, I can work with a lot larger files, so it's pretty nice. Everybody wins. This is after I grabbed all that SEMrush data. This is what I did with it. I put it into graphs, because you know SEOs, we love to graph stuff, and it's awesome when graphs are moving up and to the right. The top one I can look at segments. So the very top of the bar graphs are positions 1 through 3. The middle part is positions 4 through 10, and the base part of that each bar graph is keywords that rank in positions 11 through 20 on Google. And so I trimmed this over time, and I just got all this in. You can build these graphs in a couple of days if you just kind of, you know, get in there and download all the data. The other thing is you can keep track of, you know, the various ranking positions, and it's just, I don't know, it looks nice, it's easy to do, and it's relatively inexpensive. This is something else I think is really, really cool. With SEMrush data, they tell you what keyword ranks for what URL. And so a lot of URLs will rank for multiple keywords. So what I did was I reversed it. I didn't look at the keywords that were ranking, I looked at the URLs, and then I built a pivot table that summed up how many keywords each URL was ranking for. Does that make sense? If you know that one URL is 1 month ranking for 600 keywords, and the next month it's ranking for 700, oh, and by the way, you just added some content to that URL, well, I would call that a success. One of the other things we do with it is to check for the opposite. This particular client, J.Crew, last year they got rid of one of their pages, their kids page that was ranking for, like several hundred keywords. And so we made sure that they redirected it correctly because that's 700 keywords. You can see that the graph, a little spark line on the side. How many people know what spark lines are? Oh, that's too little. Everybody take a note. I know you're tweeting or writing stuff down. Go into Excel and look up spark lines. They're like little mini graphs you can put into a cell. It's amazing. Okay. The other URL that we had there was the sale URL. And last year, about a year and a half ago, it was ranking for 400 keywords, and now it ranks for 600 keywords. So we know that we can really track what's happening at the keyword level. This is another way you can get around not provided. Because even though you can't see how many keywords are driving traffic, you can see how many keywords are driving traffic to a particular URL. This is very valuable. If there's one thing in my presentation you should go home and do, it's this. Really helps people keep an eye on stuff. So, link building and links. I do this thing I call link reclamation. I quit buying links right before Penguin happened because I just got this feeling that Google was starting to figure stuff out. In fact, it was probably a couple of years before that anyway, because I told my clients, I thought, hey, buying links in 2006 was really fun because They were so much further ahead of the curve than Google was at that point. But in 2010 and 11, it seemed like, maybe I was a little older and maybe more cautious, but if I was to buy a link and then all of a sudden my client's site got kicked out of the index, I'm thinking that 30% of their traffic is coming from organic. Someone over there might get fired. I don't know, maybe lose their job, and next thing you know, like that sucks. So I just got out of that game completely. Not that I was ever really in it, I just did link building when I was asked. And I had lots of cool friends that knew lots of great places to get links. But this is one thing I like to do. I like to go to Omniture, Google Analytics, and Core Metrics, or whatever your tracking software is, and download every URL that has ever driven you traffic in the last few years, as far back as you can go. Compile that and put it in one tab on a spreadsheet. Then go to Webmaster Tools. They have a thing where you can go to see who's linking to you, and you can export it every single day. And if you have more than 10,000 links, it'll only let you have 10,000. But if you do it every day, sometimes it swaps out. So you can build up a nice list over time. So grab every person who's ever linking to you, and where they're. And the reason you want that report is because it tells you what URL they are linking to. Make sense? You can do the same thing in Majestic and Moz. You know when you go to Moz and you export your link, your link profile, and it lets you have 10,000 URLs. Find out who's linking to you and what landing pages they are pointing to. And grab it from every source you possibly can, whether it's Webmaster Tools, Majestic, Moz, Ahrefs, Search Metrics, Conductor, whoever has all of your link data that you have an account with, grab it all for the history that you can possibly go back and build as big of a list as you can of all the landing pages that they are pointing links to. And go back a few years because it's likely that your site went through a few iterations. It may have been redesigned in 2008 or 2012. So go find what the previous landing pages are. Then you merge all the landing pages that people were linking to with all the pages that you know that have drawn traffic to your site. Does that make sense? Through any channel. So what you come up with is this massive list of URLs. And some of them go back years. But you know that they've either driven traffic or they've driven links. So they're actually important URLs. Then you crawl them. I use Screaming Frog for this. When I crawl it, let me see what time it is here. Oh, cool. When you crawl the list, what you're going to find is you're going to find a lot of 200s. Some of those URLs are still going to be active. They're going to be fine. Kick those out of the list. What you're really looking for is the URLs that are 300s, 400s, and 500s. That means that there are pages where you actually have a lot of links coming in that are they're not behaving correctly. You're not getting credit for all of those links. So if you gather all that entire list together, and you update all of those 300, maybe you have a bunch of 302s coming in. Maybe a lot of those old pages that used to be valuable to you that have a lot of links pointing to them are actually 404s right now. If you fix all of that, you're probably talking, if you have a big enough client, you could be talking about thousands of links that are now coming back to you and giving you the authority and the trust and all the historical, all that stuff that Google looks at, and it's free. And so if you do this and you find that you had 10,000 links coming to you, and maybe to buy 10,000 links would cost $500,000 if they're $50 each maybe. I don't know. It could be a ton of money worth of links coming to you. Make sure they're coming from good places though. So there's additional steps, but does everybody see what I'm saying here? Pretty good concept of just claiming back the links that once were yours that you're not getting credit for anymore. That's what the point of this is. Yeah, so the time is, I got some more minutes. Content. Oh, this is a huge one. Entity search. Have y'all been reading about entity search? Anybody? It's really, all the people that are doing predictions about the future of SEO are talking about this at some point. Justin Briggs, the guys at Moz. What they did, this one guy, it was awesome. He found I think it was Gianluca found this. Oh yeah, I put his thing down there. You can actually go to Google AdWord Planner or Keyword Planner, plug in the URL like I did jeans, like for Wikipedia, and it'll give you all the keywords that Google thinks that page is about, which is pretty awesome because it tells you, you know that you want to rank for jeans, but it tells you all the other secondary keywords. And then you can use the filters to say, I want stuff that's highly competitive, that costs a lot of money, that drives a lot of leads. So you can actually filter that list down, and you all of a sudden have this massive list of keywords you need to write about, content that you need to include. They say the day of just optimizing for a keyword is coming to an end because of entity search. Like in this case, I think I did greatest basketball player of all time. And it pulled up that carousel up there, and it put LeBron at second, which I thought was really weird because LeBron's Wikipedia page doesn't talk about the greatest basketball player of all time. In fact, a lot of the stuff about LeBron doesn't do that. So Google's finding that information somewhere, and they're compiling this list of people that they've put together based on a lot of information on other websites. So this stuff's really cool. And sometimes you can do a search nowadays. It used to be that if I searched for laptop computers, every single result in the top 10 would be laptop computers, laptop computers, laptop computers, laptop computers. Today it's very different. You don't necessarily see that all the time. It's not just about keywords anymore. And so one of the things people talk about is topic hubs. He says to treat all of your site like it's a collection of microsites. Pretty interesting information. I love this one, this customer service line. I do this for some of my clients, and it's the wrong number. And they're like, how do we fix it? And I'm like, let's go look for where they got this one. It takes some time sometimes to find it too. The other thing that you can really look at and get some great ideas for content is your on-site search data. People are coming to your site looking for something. They're telling you what they're looking for. And a lot of people ignore this data. Like it's there. It's in their GA or it's in their Omniture, and they don't look at it. It's pretty phenomenal what you'll find in there. We did a really big project for Radio Shack. Radio Shack gets tens of thousands of on-site searches a day. And unlike Google, the keywords are provided. We see what they were looking for. And so what we did was we downloaded them, and we could see that this particular keyword was searched for 1,000 times, and it had a bounce rate of 100% and revenue of 0. And so we can go and look at what that visitor was being exposed to when they searched for that keyword. And a lot of times the internal search did not find anything matching that keyword, yet there are products that go along with that keyword. It was just something that the internal algorithm didn't necessarily know. And so we would take some of those keywords, especially the misspellings, and we would redirect internal searches to their correct pages. And all of a sudden conversion skyrocketed on quite a few keywords. It's a really good idea. So brace yourselves. There's a lot of stuff in there. You'll also find sometimes that people come to your site and search for really weird shit. So on-site search, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I shared a cab ride back with Eric Inga from Stone Temple Consulting from SMX East, and I just happened to, he was hailing a cab, and I was like, can I jump in the car with you? And he was like, who are you? And he was kind of mad. He thought I was trying to sell him my luxury car service to the airport. But all the way to the airport, we talked, and it was really cool. And one of the things I'll never forget was I asked him about how he sold content and how he developed and how he created content. And he told me that the number one thing he really cares about is that if he pays somebody to create a lot of content for him, he then asks another expert in that field if that content that he got stood up. Was it what another expert in the field would think is good content? I thought that was a really good idea. You should really look at your content like you're really proud of it. The days of hiring some agency to give you 50 posts a day to throw into your blog because it's related to whatever you sell, those days are gone. In fact, a lot of people will say that if you have a lot of content on your site that isn't being read or isn't being hit, isn't being shared, you should just get rid of it. Some people, you can go to GA, and remember how I showed y'all landing pages earlier today, how to get to the landing page data in your GA account? Sort it inverse order. Find all the pages on your site that haven't gotten very many visits in the last year. If you have a page on your site that has only gotten 1 or 2 visits in the last year, there's a good argument just to kill that page. Just delete it. 404 it. Some people think that if you have this massive site that's really awesome, but you also have a lot of these pages that Google could look at and say, that's crap, it's probably pulling your site down in some ways. I don't go everybody do that, but just keep that in mind. Sometimes you'd be surprised because a page that you think is really great, it actually sucks. You should love your content as much as Macho Man loves Miss Elizabeth. Rest in peace to both of them. Hulk Hogan should be pointing at you at WrestleMania saying, look at that content. I'll tell you who's crushing it right now that I absolutely hate is BuzzFeed. I did a search for BuzzFeed 67. You can put any number in there. What I found was like 6 articles. It was like 67 things that will make you laugh, 67 ways you can leave your lover. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. And last year I was wondering, why do they always write these random numbers? And then it hit me. When you go to, you know how Google like monitors how long you're on a site now? If you click into BuzzFeed and then click back to the search results, Google knows that. If they see someone coming to your site, staying for 2 seconds, going back to the search results, going to the next site down and then staying there for 5 minutes, or never coming back to the search results, you technically may have been more relevant for that query, but Google's going to say that the person below you in the search results actually provided more value because the visitor to your site or to their site never returned back to the search results. And I started thinking about stupid BuzzFeed here. It's no wonder they make their lists so long. They're keeping you on their site. I like conspiracies, remember? That's why they're doing this. They're keeping people on their site, and you know who else likes what can BuzzFeed tell all their advertising partners? People come to our site, they typically stay there. So not only does it help them for SEO purposes, oh, by the way, when you have 67 things on a page that are all thematically related to one topic, guess what? You've got a topic hub, and you're probably going to rank really high. This is the perfect plan. And it's like pandering to all of us, and we love it, and we share it, and gosh, I get lost in their site for hours. Another one is the Huffington Post that does this. This one I thought was cheating. They wrote an article about some guy, a fisherman said he saw Bigfoot bathing, and he sent in a picture to the Huffington Post. The Huffington Post writes like a 1,000-word article on this topic, and it ranks for Bigfoot stuff. Yet in the article, they talked about how it was totally disproven. And I was like, that's not fair. You're writing about something that you know is fake, but again, they're crushing it. They're smart about how they do this. And here's the paragraphs where they say that, you know, it was completely faked, and it was a gorilla in a Bigfoot suit, they said. It was pretty funny. Some FBI person. The next one I think is crushing it, which is really funny to think about because Vice.com is like the news source for a lot of younger people today. I like the site. I like the show. It's pretty cool. I did a search. I did a advanced operator here just for Vice.com, and give me pages where in the title it says, reasons why blank city is the worst ever. And I found 54 articles that were all about that. I know it's kind of far away to see, but every one of them says, reasons why San Francisco is the worst place ever. Reasons why Las Vegas is the worst place ever. Reasons why Austin is the worst place ever. That's all they do. They're just generating content, and they're doing it right. They're getting it right, but is it really good? Google thinks so. They rank this shit. Sorry. I'm only cursing because I'm emotional because I'm jealous. I would love to be able to, awesome. Oh, here's the other side. I forgot about that. I actually took 2 screenshots because the list kept going. It was awesome. I didn't really know that Comic-Con is the worst place ever. Or London is the worst. Did you know London's a terrible place? And that's the other thing. These sites will publish stuff that they know is categorically false or completely subjective because it gets shared. People love to hate stuff. Just ask Justin Bieber. XML sitemaps. Again, these are more important than ever. I went into Webmaster Tools, and I saw that one of my clients had a sitemap that was submitted only half indexed. This can't happen. It's 2015, people. We have to get this right. So go into your Webmaster Tools and make sure that all of your sitemaps are submitted and they're indexed like at least 90%. Anybody keep track of how much percentage of their sitemaps are indexed? Good stuff. This is another important quote that it was from 4 years, God, 2011 was 4 years ago. This is crazy. If you start showing me, this is Dwayne Forrester, by the way, formerly from Bing. If you start showing me 301s in here, rel canonicals, 404 errors, all of that, I'm going to start distrusting your sitemap, and I'm just not going to bother with it anymore. In fact, he said that if more than 1% of your sitemap was something else besides a 200, they just stopped crawling it. So when was the last time you crawled your sitemap? Go crawl your sitemap and see if you get back all 200s. You might be surprised. And here's Bing. And you know, Bing was always way slower than Google at stuff. He's telling you that if 1% of your sitemap sucks, he's not going to crawl it. Well, imagine what Google's doing. Maybe the first time they see an error, they quit. In fact, I think that happens sometimes. So I have a sitemap to-do list, make sure all that, yeah, blah. Okay. Rel alternate tags for international sites. So this was earlier this year. I don't know if you monitor Twitter's traffic. Their traffic skyrocketed last year because they started letting Google index their hashtag pages. Like when you do a search on Google and for a hashtag. So I went and looked at this term World Cup because it was ranking like this keyword World Cup Twitter ranks really high still today, I think, in Google for that term. I went and looked at their source code, and this is what I found. I found all these href lang tags. So the official is twitter.com/hashtag/World Cup. But then in their source code, they give me every single possible language variation for that hashtag, which is awesome. It really helps Google out when they're crawling Twitter and trying to serve the right results in the right countries. This is a little bit overboard because they have dozens and dozens of countries. Most of us might have a client that has a presence internationally with maybe 1 to 5 different sites, but this is something that really works. And Twitter's traffic proves it. App indexing is really big right now. People are starting to talk about it more. Getting your app, have you ever tried to crawl your app with Screaming Frog or maybe Xenu if you're old school? I don't even know how to do it. But Google has put a bunch of websites, they're starting to show apps in the results. Like in the search results, it'll say open an app. So your initial search maybe takes you to the website. But nowadays, maybe that same visitor clicked on that button that said open an app, and they went to your app instead. Isn't that interesting? If you have an app that's indexed in Google, you might see some of your organic traffic now going to the app instead. So let's say your app launches, and some of your organic traffic now is going to the app, and some of it's not. Like your numbers might go down, and you don't really know why. So if you have a client that is getting indexed and getting traffic from Google into their app, guess what? Apps have a whole lot of other type of KPIs and metrics that I don't even know what they are because I don't work in apps. Users, session length, session interval, time in app, acquisition, screen flow. And Keanu's like, whoa. Bill and Ted's right there. Socrates just dropped some knowledge on him. It was awesome. Site monitoring. Make sure you're monitoring your visits daily. I like to go into Google and set my dimension to sources. I set it to get into source and set it to device, operating system, browser. Track anything and everything you can on a daily basis to see if something all of a sudden goes haywire. It's not good enough anymore to say, oh, you got this many visits from Google this week. You have to also look at browsers and device types and all sorts of stuff. This was that thing I told you about. Brian found at Authority Labs found that Google was rewriting title tags 60% of the time nowadays. So go do some checks on your title tags. What we found is that if you can write your title tags to be less than 512 pixels, you generally won't have Google rewriting your title tags. Although it's sometimes nice to see what they write it as, because you might know what you should write it as. Pretty cool. Here's a little case study of site stability. If your site goes down, your rankings drop. This is rankings. Our site, one of my clients' sites went down for about 3 days, and their rankings immediately dropped. It used to be 10 years ago, your site could go down for months and Google would continue to serve at number 1, number 2, whatever your rankings were. Nowadays, if your site drops, if you've got a bunch of 404s, your rankings are out of there. Google's not going to be sending people to your website. Same thing, these guys were down for like 8 weeks. Websites are kind of like families. You have a nice house, beautiful kids, but don't forget about that cousin that you've got. You've got to go find those pages. And my advice to you, it's time to clean up your shit. I'm moving through here a little bit faster. Stuff I'm tired of hearing is, just build great content. Well, Google says, that stuff really grinds my gears. I hate it. If I go to a conference these days and they're saying, just build great content. Don't do that. That's so generic. Tell me what to build. Give me some cool ideas. Be creative about it. And then do not let anyone tell you that Google says. If that's the basis of their SEO strategy, maybe I'm a little old school where I don't really trust them all the time. But go out there and really, inside of your company, create a culture of testing. This is the other one I hate. Oh, buying links is bad. Typically given to you by someone who's never, ever bought links before. The best SEO advice ever, create a culture of testing. A lot of SEO nowadays is going back to where people are testing things. They're saying, what if we have 2 H1 tags on this page, or this group of pages, and we only have 1 on this, or 0 on another third? What happens to our rankings at that point? This needs to happen more often nowadays, because people, all those guys that I told you I learned about, they're the ones who told us to put the brand at the front of the title tag. They're the ones that told us to make sure our links or our most important pages were only like 1 click into our website. A lot of that stuff nowadays just isn't being done. Find out what happens when you add something different to a title tag. Find out what happens when you change your breadcrumbs from your brand to back to the word home. See if it makes a difference anymore. Stop reading about SEO. Start doing SEO. There's so much out there that you could read. You could spend every day of your life reading about SEO, but go do SEO. Just go take some chances. And then really, regarding revenue, this is probably the best. This is Dion. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. I love that. It's a good conversion rate quote. This is Google, Michael Scott. This is what they do. You're kind of skating along, and all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, they come and get you sometimes. Just talk to anyone who's been false positive on Panda or Penguin. It sucks, especially when they waited 11 months to update Penguin. Those websites that got hit by it, and they weren't supposed to be hit by it, like it was an accident, a lot of them went out of business. So, sometimes the future is really cool, like Elon Musk wants to spend $10 billion to build an internet in space. Sometimes human-like robots are getting jobs. That's a robot that's getting a job. Sometimes Nike is actually going to make the shoes from Back to the Future 2 right now. Sometimes, this recently happened, we love this stuff. It happens. Really, this is SEO. I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. So these guys on Apollo 13 went into this room with a box of shit, and they were like, we've got to find a way to make this fit into the hole for this using nothing but that. And really, that's SEO a lot of times. But we all love challenges. Whenever you find one, say, I'm your Huckleberry, and always end your presentation with a cat picture. Thank you very much.